Okay, we are on our American Revolution notes, part 2, so you should be partway down the page for your American Revolution notes. We finished with the First Continental Congress at the end of the last slide, in the last presentation, and now we're going to move to the shot heard around the world. British soldiers in Boston were sent to capture the militia's weapons. So we talked about the First Continental Congress helped set up militias throughout the colonies. British soldiers are then sent to Boston, where the headquarters of the early revolution were. They were sent there to take weapons from that militia. This is where the Paul Revere, the British are coming, the British are coming, the British are coming, comes from. The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, that poem. So Paul Revere, a few others, warned the colonists that the Redcoats are coming. British troops marched to Concord, Massachusetts to capture colonial leaders and the ammunition that was stored there. And then the first two battles of the American Revolution occur. They were fought at Lexington and Concord, and when the American militia met up with the British forces. The first fighting of the Revolutionary War was at Lexington and Concord. So then, the Second Continental Congress gets together. So the colonies basically send leaders to Philadelphia, and I don't want to go to Massachusetts because there's too many British troops there, but they go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to decide what to do next. They appoint George Washington as the commander of the army. So George Washington is the leader of the colonial army, and at this point we know that war is imminent. Not all the colonists, though, were on board. Some wanted to stay with England, some wanted to be free, some wanted some sort of combination. But we know now that war is going to happen, and George Washington is selected as the leader. There's a picture of George Washington in his military uniform. So how did we convince people that the revolution was a good idea and that we should get rid of the British as our leaders, as the colonial power? Well, one thing that had a big effect was a pamphlet called Common Sense. Common Sense was written by a man named Thomas Paine, and it encouraged the colonists to declare independence from Great Britain. They said, it is common sense that we kick out the British and we rule ourselves as colonies and as a country. It was influential, it was read by a lot of people, and it helped to motivate and convince people that the revolution was the right thing. So now, other things that kind of led to the revolution fully taking effect. Here in North Carolina, we had something called the Mecklenburg Resolves. And if you look at the flag in the front of the room, or down in the picture down here, the May 20th, 1775, it's because of these Mecklenburg Resolves. It was a list of statements and grievances against the King and Parliament of England. Mecklenburg County became the first in North Carolina to declare independence from England. So we've got a county saying, that's it, we're done, we're out, we're no longer part of England, we want to be our own country and our own control of ourselves. Then, North Carolina becomes the first state to declare independence from England in 1776 on April 12th. So the bottom of the flag, April 12, 1776, that is from the Halifax Resolves. And part of what the Halifax Resolves, the creation and ratification of the Resolves, was the result of a strong movement in the colonies advocating separation from Britain. These separatists, or American Whigs, sought to mobilize public support for a much-discussed and all-encompassing Declaration of Independence. So basically, the Halifax Resolves are one of the things that leads to the Declaration of Independence. And things like the Mecklenburg Resolves and the Halifax Resolves were passed in many of the colonies and in many even towns and cities and counties in the counties before and leading up to the Declaration of Independence. So this is where the colonies together decide to declare independence from Great Britain. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was the main writer. He was 33 years old when he wrote it. 2 years older than your teacher, Mr. Symes. It was signed on July 4th, 1776, which is why we celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. And we're going to analyze the Declaration of Independence in much further depth and another class. But this was the day, July 4th, that the United States officially declares independence from Great Britain. Here is a copy of it. This is not in your note sheet, but pay attention still. Ben Franklin, one of the most famous men in the world and a really important American diplomat, is sent to France to ask for military aid and money. Because the United States is a small, or wasn't the United States yet, the American colonies don't have their own money, they don't have a lot of resources, so they need a lot of help getting the war started. So Ben Franklin goes to France, spends a long time there, working on trying to convince France and other countries to help donate money and weapons and troops. There he is. Okay, so we're going to leave the legacy of the American Revolution till the end. Flip your note sheet over, and you'll have a chart about different battles. Here's a map that shows some of the major battles. We're going to talk about Lexington and Concord, we're going to talk about Saratoga, we're going to talk about Yorktown, and we're going to talk about 3 battles that occurred in North Carolina. You're going to, with the information from the slides, fill in a chart that talks about, that's going to list where the battle happened, when it happened, who won, and why it was important. The first one, we talked about this a little bit already, but the first one we're going to go into more depth on is Lexington and Concord. It was fought in Massachusetts on April 19th, 1775. The British won at Lexington, the colonists retreated to the city of Concord, and won the second half of the battle there. It's important because it signifies the official start of the Revolutionary War. There's a picture down on the bottom of fighting. See, it's just downtown. Redcoats, the British soldiers are there. Colonial militia is represented here. Next one, we're going to talk about the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. That was fought near Wilmington in North Carolina on February 27th, 1776. The colonists won. It gives them confidence that they could fight against the British. So that's part of why it's important. It's also important because the victory was celebrated throughout the southern colonies. First battle of the Revolution that took place in North Carolina. Saratoga. Saratoga was fought in New York, in the colony of New York, on August 16, 1777. It was won by the colonists, and it was considered a turning point in the war. New York is your colony. August 16, 1777 is your win. Won by the colonists. And why was it important? It's considered a turning point. Other colonies, or other countries, especially France, agreed to help the colonists against the British. Remember we said Ben Franklin was in France trying to convince the French that they should help the Americans in their war against Great Britain. France, though, doesn't want to help a guaranteed loss. So they kind of hold out at first, but when the colonists win some battles, then they realize, okay, this has a legitimate chance of happening, so now they join the war. Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain was a battle that was fought in both North and South Carolina on October 7th, 1780. It was a major victory by the colonial army, and it forced the British to retreat out of North Carolina and farther down into South Carolina. Here, this map is showing multiple battles that happened throughout the South in 1780. Kings Mountain is right here, right on the border of North and South Carolina. Yorktown. Yorktown was one of the last major battles fought in the war. It was fought in the colony of Virginia on October 19th, 1781. It was won by the colonists, and the war was considered to be mostly over because of this battle. So its significance is that it's really the last major battle of the war. And the last one, Guilford Courthouse. The Battle of Guilford Courthouse was fought in Guilford, North Carolina on March 15th, 1781. The British win the battle, but they suffer really high casualties. A lot of troops killed, a lot of troops wounded, and in the end, Cornwallis's army gets trapped by George Washington's army in Yorktown, in Virginia. Okay, so you should have your chart finished. Flip back over to the front of your notes, and the very last thing we're going to take notes on is the legacy of the Revolution. So it's important to know that the British had a lot of advantages, but the colonists still won the war for a couple different reasons. The military leadership of George Washington was really important. Help from other countries, especially France, but also countries including Spain, Germany, and Poland, all enemies of England. Help from those countries helps the colonies greatly. And the colonists know the land, and they have a much higher motivation than the British soldiers. The Treaty of Paris ends the war, setting up new boundaries for the United States, so we're no longer the 13 colonies, now it's the United States of America. The war led to 25,000 American soldiers dying and 10,000 British soldiers dying. It also led the new United States in $27 million in debt, which is huge amounts in today's money. That's $27 million in 1781 money. After the war, the new country has to decide how they're going to be governed and what rights to grant what people. That'll be the next part that we'll talk about, and the Articles of Confederation and creating the United States Constitution.